This episode of the All About Nothing podcast is sponsored by Everplay Sports and Social Summer 2026 Adult Sports Leagues. Registering now through May 20th for kickball, softball, volleyball, pickleball, bowling, and more. Visit everplaysocial.com for details and registration. Do it now because these leagues will sell out. It's a great way to get off the couch and hang out with friends while doing enjoyable, fun activities. Again, visit everplaysocial.com and sign up today.
The All About Nothing podcast may have language and content
that isn't appropriate for some.
Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome, Nothingers, to the All About Nothing podcast. This is episode number 303. I am Barrett Gruber. No Zac again this week. Please subscribe and share the show. That's how we get new listeners. Also, please consider supporting the show financially by visiting theallaboutnothing.com, becoming an official member, and proudly calling yourself a true Nothinger. We'll have more details on that at the end of the show. If you can't do that, please give us a 5-star review, a like, and follow us across social media. You can find links at theallaboutnothing.com. Real quick, want to thank whoever it was our last guest was. I feel like whenever this episode comes out on a Monday, I think the last guest was Heather Foy. So really appreciate Heather coming on the show, talking about her podcast, talking about her experience with her deconstructing from religion, her faith-based moral purity, psycho-ness. I'm thankful she's out because I think she seems like she appreciates the person she is now. So again, thanks to Heather for being on the show. Sorry, Tamara couldn't be with us, but hopefully we'll get them back both on here soon. That out of the way, we're joined by a guest who wears many hats, all of them focused on the well-being of our community here in South Carolina. Jessicka Spearman Childs is a licensed professional counselor and a dedicated advocate for mental health and LGBTQ plus rights. As the founder of Anderson Reads and the founding president of the PFLAG Anderson, she has spent years on the front lines of community building. Many of you also know her as a powerful voice in the political arena, carrying forward a legacy of service and advocacy in South Carolina's families. Jessicka, welcome to the All About Nothing podcast.
Thank you for having me. Yay. Finally get to be on. I'm so honored.
We have been planning this for a while. It was at one time it was centered around abortion. And then the next time it was like, okay, well, Katrina Shealy, former senator, my former state senator, they had this documentary movie thing that's supposed to be coming out. We still don't know when it's coming out, but we were going to have you both on. Katrina is absolutely, even in what would be semi-retirement, is still one of the most busy people I think that I've ever met in my entire life. I don't know when she sleeps because she posts on her Facebook the porch, conversations that she does almost more frequently than I wake up in the morning.
She's
I think
definitely on it. For sure.
So she is incredibly busy. Yeah. And we weren't able to get her on tonight, but there's a lot going on in South Carolina with, in respect to yet another abortion bill that is attempting to basically make abortion illegal at conception, I guess, in the state of South Carolina. And ultimately my first question is, why is it that across the country, not just in South Carolina, but why is it that we have old white men who continue to sexualize children my age and teenagers and have this weird attachment to trying to constantly control their bodies and control women's bodies in general? And so what's your idea on that?
I mean, we live in a very patriarchal society where, the birth rate is down right now, and they're saying that we are no longer going to be, the majority. And I think that they're having a real issue with that right now. And I hate to say it. I mean, my specialty is preschool trauma, including but not limited to sexual abuse. And I see a lot of incest and I see a lot of rape of very small children. So I think it's just a lot of control and a lot of fetishization of children. And, ownership and control. If we control what the women are doing, we're controlling what the kids are doing. We're controlling future populations. And that's terrifying.
The bill that we're talking about for this 2026, because it feels like it's basically a new bill every single year, is Senate Bill 1095. It's officially titled the Unborn Child Protection Act, but it doesn't really feel like Unborn Child Protection Act is really the right name to give it, because really what it is sort of it's an incarceration of women that would potentially seek an abortion. So basically what it does is it's a near total abortion ban, which right now, South Carolina, we have a 6-week abortion ban. After 6 weeks is when state law sort of comes into play. So, let's say you have a one-night stand with somebody and you decide that you want to take plan B like the next day or within a week or whatever, and you take that. Well, right now that's still legal, but if this bill were to go through, that would be considered illegal.
Right.
So it's much more restrictive than previous legislation. It removes the previously existing exceptions for rape and incest, allowing an abortion only if the pregnant person's life is in danger or to prevent permanent physical impairment. As
And
far as like,
there,
yeah, as far as like medications, it would reclassify common abortion inducing drugs like mifepristone and misoprostol. It's gonna bump those up to basically a Scheduled Ford controlled substance. It also introduces felony charges for providers and potentially creates civil liabilities for those who aid or abet the procedure. This is like Orwell type stuff.
well, and if you listen to the testimony today, there was a pushback against, why are we taking out the caveats that exist right now for rape and incest and for, fatal fetal anomaly. And I mean, we're talking about anencephaly was the example that was brought up, which means the brain has not developed fully in utero. And Richard Cash was like, I don't care. I do not care. And like, I mean, that was basically his entire vibe about the entire thing, the entire committee hearing was, I don't care. Every child has a right to life. When he was asked, he wants both parents, if a minor is being taken across state lines to another state to either get medication or receive surgical abortion, that both parents be in the affirmative and agreement with that. And um, Senator Bright Matthews was like, hey, what about if one of the parents is the biological parent of the fetus? And he was like, I do not care. He still gets to say so. Which, Senator Brad Hutto was like, hey, well, I mean, you're just giving him more power. He said he did not care. That, he wanted all of the caveats taken away, all of the exceptions taken away. And if you saw what I see on a daily basis, I used to work for the Child Advocacy Center and 2 of the counties in the upstate, and still have friends that work for Julie Valentine Center. And the things that we see, and I mean, I get the preschool kids that are seen at Julie Valentine Center and that live in the area that I work in, because Julie Valentine Center also covers the area that I work in. But when you see these children that have been taken advantage of by a family member. And it would not be the first time that I had a client that was, had been impregnated by a family member, including stepfathers, fathers, uncles. And these are the things that I deal with on a daily basis. I see my clients once a week, and the horror that these children have to already go through. And now you're saying that they have to learn to love a child. They're a child themselves, and they have to learn how to love a child that was created in such violence and hate.
I don't get it. I cannot put myself, which is one of the things I try to do when I disagree with someone. I try to put myself in their position and recognize what it is their perspective is. I try to take into account, what available history is about them. What sort of information can I draw that would give me an idea of what it is that they've experienced and why it is that, in this case, like a Senator Cash, who then pushes forth this legislation that wants to basically criminalize the idea of a woman not wanting to have a child. It doesn't, I just can't wrap my head around that. And it, I just don't get, I mean, I look at these senators and it's like, one of the things that I'm assuming is that they have like, did they experience some sort of a loss? Like, did they not have a brother because their mother decided, oh shit, this one's this bad? I don't want one more. Let me make sure that I, but there's also that we're looking at the potential of there's been talk in the media about some senators wanting to push even further and like make not condoms but contraceptives
Yeah, birth control.
illegal.
Mhm.
Like and they're doing it in the weirdest way. The Schedule 4 thing is weird because Schedule 4 basically means you need a prescription.
Right.
But the idea of Schedule 4 is that the government recognizes the medical necessity for this for some patients, requires that it be prescribed, but then attaches this idea that it's still potentially some sort of medication that could cause you harm, which I understand. But we're not talking about two drugs that there is a clinical records of during trials of there actually being any medical damage done to people or even
Right.
psychological damage being done to people that are on either one of these. I
Right. Well, and I'm one of those people that, I have a sister, and her and I both have just boatloads of kids. For those that don't know, I'm a foster mom, I'm an adoptive mom, I'm a stepmom, and a biological mom. Altogether, I have 6 kids. So, I have a sister who has 4 children, and mifepristol saved her life. She had a miscarriage, and otherwise known as a missed abortion. And it was a miscarriage that was not detected until later. And she literally was in inpatient, about to receive, going in through outpatient, about to receive a DNC. And she hemorrhaged in the floor of outpatient and almost died. I mean, and to hear the doctor cry about that was unsettling for me because it was 6 hours later and I didn't know what was going on. She was supposed to have been long out of that. And, I think that's one of the things that people don't understand. Who would have raised my sister's kids if something had happened to her? And by that time, she had 3, and they were all the same ages as my children. So it would have been me raising my
yeah
sister's children. And, already, and I mean, I know that I would have done it, obviously, but how my nieces and nephew would have been affected by something that horrible happening to my sister and, the trauma from losing their mom that early, which within months, my nephew lost his dad. So I know what effect that had on his life. And had he lost my sister, just a couple of months before, he would have been, without any parent. So
yeah
I think that's the scary part for me is knowing that these medications do save lives. And not only do they save lives, but women need the opportunity to be able to plan their future. Um, when you don't have the money for a child and cannot afford a child, domestic violence rates go up.
mm,
And these are all what we call adverse childhood events, witnessing domestic violence, having a parent pass away, all these things, even if it's like threats of hitting someone, this has an effect on your mental health. And the more ACEs that you have, the more affected you are and the more health outcomes you have in life. And these children that come into my office, because I literally work in the mountains of South Carolina, have a lot of ACEs. And we also see a lot of asthma, a lot of, digestive issues, a lot of headaches, a lot of these things that come along with these ACEs that need, have been studied and shown that this is, has a health outcome. And this is provable fact. Like we know this. There was supposed to be legislation passed that would help the children who'd experienced adverse childhood events, and we didn't do it. We're constantly talking about the mental health, of South Carolinians. There's all these mental health issues, and we don't do anything about it.
Yeah, it's really curious as many bills that get written, and of course a lot of them get tabled, but the number of bills that actually are focusing on the issues in South Carolina. Infrastructure is one of the big ones. I mean, you live up in Anderson, you work in Liberty, but even here in Columbia and Lexington and Irmo and what have you, we have roads that are deteriorating. And when people make comments about it to Senator Carlisle, who is my current state senator, when I see the comments that are being left on social media and I see his office respond to some of them, there isn't any recognition of just like what the priorities are. We have a poverty issue here in South Carolina that has been ignored for 23 years. And there is literally no one there. I don't even see any bills being proposed by the party in power to try and figure out how to resolve this poverty issue that we have. Like there are more people living below the poverty line in South Carolina now than there were 10 years ago. We have more families that are absolutely in a state of need when it comes to food stamps, which is which of course affects the state budget. We have more families that don't have any health insurance, which ultimately drives up the budget in South Carolina because they're having to go to the emergency room for things that are not necessarily emergencies, but they know that they have to get treated if they go. And South Carolina taxpayers wind up paying for those services that gets pulled out of the budget. It takes money away from other things. And it just doesn't, there doesn't seem to be any recognition as to what it takes to actually make a state prosperous, not profitable. Our state is profitable. Like we know it's profitable because we have industry moving here to South Carolina to take advantage of very specific tax breaks that make it profitable. And we also have state senators and state representatives that are constantly, how many of them drive Cadillacs? There's a fair number of them. I'm not accusing anybody of maybe taking money in the back pocket, but I think we know.
Too, though, what the income for a state representative and a state senator is like absolutely nothing, and that's on purpose so that the common person cannot be elected and make a living. That was when Eric and I were running simultaneously for office. It was like, okay, how can we do this? If you win, can you take the cut? If you win, are we going to be able to afford this cut that's going to happen? So yeah, and I look, I'm like, well, a lot of these people are attorneys, so they're doing their thing afterwards. But whoa, there is a lot of very rich people who are not in tune with the normal everyday life. I see Medicaid clients. Even in private practice, I'm seeing Medicaid clients. And would never change that. I see a few, private insurance, but Medicaid clients are my favorite clients. And they don't take this for granted. But some of my private insurance people are the ones that don't show up for sessions, where my Medicaid clients are the ones that show up for sessions. Especially when something has happened and it was traumatic, it's always the Medicaid clients who show up. And we don't, I feel like we do not care about anyone. You're talking about the infrastructure. There was a road down the street from here that fell apart, literally fell into a body of water while people were about to drive across it. And people just seem to not understand that is the level where we are at right now. You come back in from Georgia down 85, and it was our first bridge. We came back from Georgia one night and terrible traffic. Why? There was a hole in the bridge on the South Carolina side. And you're talking about Columbia and stuff. My daughter's at USC. I've had to put two alignments on her car. And she's a sophomore.
Yeah. And it's not, infrastructure, mental health in the state of South Carolina. Like, these are things that they're not focusing on. We have a domestic violence pandemic here in South Carolina. There are women and children that are becoming statistics basically every single day all over the state, and it's not getting the attention of our lawmakers.
Yeah.
The fact that they're very focused on making sure that we can all carry guns around, but they're not focused on the idea of what happens when those guns are being carried around by people that might not be quite stable enough to operate a firearm.
Right.
And then you couple that with the people that are driving that shouldn't be driving. It's that it is such we have moved so far away from what the priorities of the state representatives and senators should be, and they have focused on things like this, which is, we need to make sure women can't make decisions for themselves. We need to make sure that they aren't out there gallivanting, and we need to make sure that they are increasing the population as much as possible. I think maybe it wasn't Cash, it was Zell maybe, that was being questioned about a bill, I think, that had to do with, I think you posted it recently, that, well, help me out. It was a bill that it was one, I think, with Senator Zell that I think that you posted.
I posted where he was arguing.
Days.
Yeah, he was arguing with the expert OBGYN. Like,
yes.
He was arguing with her. He said that he was just so nasty to her, and it was information he was supposed to gather, like what's the percentage of the medication that's prescribed for an actual abortion versus hemorrhaging and things like that. And she didn't have the number because that was his job to do. Now she's already educated him on what she does. And, anytime that we speak in front of senators and stuff like that, it is always tell your personal story. Tell us what it is you're seeing in your area. And, he asked her this question about, how much of this medication is actually being used for what you say it's being used for. And she was like, well, all I can speak on is what I use at my office. And he ambushed her with you're just antecedent information. And she's like, wait, but that's why I'm here. That's the purpose of my testimony. And, it was rough to see. And the rest of the rest of the gentlemen that were testifying, the men that were testifying, were all religious reasons why they did not want abortion legal. And they were the ones saying, put the death penalty on these people. And Vicky Ringer knocked it out of the park when she's like, we'll always figure out a way. We've been figuring out a way for years. But, the men, they were treated with respect, and these were not experts in their field. Nobody can tell me how to do my job. I know I can't tell an OBGYN how to do her job, because goodness knows I don't need to be delivering babies. But when it comes to when something bad happens to those babies, I got that end of it. I cannot imagine being a senator who owns an ice cream truck for a living and telling an expert OBGYN who recruits for the state of South Carolina what to do.
I mean,
the audacity.
The fact that everyone that comes in there to speak in front of these committees, any of the committees, they're giving anecdotes. That's what they do. Even if they're there as an expert and the questions that are being asked of experts, the answers that they're going to give are either on data or anecdotes. They're stories. They're going to tell their story. That is the whole purpose, because the senators are supposed to take that in. That representatives are supposed to take that in committee and then render their decisions on whether or not the bill even needs to make it out of committee.
Right.
And what it feels like, especially for this bill from the Senate, S 1095, these hearings are 100%. It is almost like they have no real value to it. These senators come into these hearings and they've already made up their decision the only reason they're doing it is so that they can check it off the list. They can check it off of their task list and move it on to the floor. Where,
Right.
Ultimately, based on who it is that's currently representing in across the state, I have a fear that this one's going to pass and that it may move on to the House. And if there's enough religious zealots in the House, and there are, that they may pass it. My only hope is that there's the potential that there will be enough women, and there's not many.
Not in the Senate, especially.
Yeah, no, but in the House to at least recognize that this bill isn't just about the people in your district. This is about you. I mean, this is.
Here's the thing I noticed today, though, because I've watched the hearings the past 2 days. I have not, unfortunately, been able to go down there. I have a job and a caseload. Imagine that on a Tuesday morning. I can't get down there
And
or
gas
on
is
Wednesday morning.
$3.95 a gallon, and
Right, right. So, I have been watching online, and I will notice, and this comes out Monday, so hopefully, I think it's Tuesday they're going to go back in. Um, the speed was throttled today in which things were being handled. Um,
mm,
I don't think they have the Senate votes to clear this through. I do
mm,
know, this is not the first one for this legislative session. They like Cash tried this in October or November, and it was defeated because that was the one that wanted execution for women who were getting abortions, and he tried really hard, and that was part of the testimony the other day. He got called out for not being extreme enough by some of the guys that were there. And he's like, this bill didn't pass, but he did clearly notate that he was incrementally increasing the heat. So next it would be birth control, which if you're paying attention to what he's saying after implantation is when he's saying it's fertilized, because he did kind of step back on that too. It was after fertilization, and you can test positive for pregnancy. What do you say, 6 to 10 days after fertilization? I hate to tell him, my niece, and I have every pregnancy test she ever took. My niece, who I love more than life, and I helped raise her, when she was pregnant, she was 6 weeks and 4 days before she tested positive. I don't know why. Baby's healthy. She's 4 years old now, but
yeah,
she just did not. And these were blood tests that were testing her HCG. So he was told he wasn't extreme enough. But when there was testifiers in November, they were saying, hey, this is way too extreme for us. So they're picking and choosing too who's testifying, which I find mortifying.
of course.
Why are you picking the moderate? There was moderate people there in November, and they were like, hey, this is way too far for us. But this time, these guys were like, no, this isn't far enough. You need to, these ladies, if they're doing anything to these unborn children. But I did take note, and I'm going to post it in the next little bit, is Cash said, the consequences for when speaking on, anencephaly and things like that, he said the consequences for killing a, a not born child would be the same as killing an alive child. And I was like, so he doesn't even believe his own hypocrisy for the way he just
Yeah.
phrased it. So, and
it,
he's
it doesn't surprise me coming out of Cash. I mean, it just doesn't. This is
no,
not. We don't have the most intelligent representatives. We don't have representatives that do their due diligence to make sure that they have enough information, that they are prepared for these hearings, that they are prepared for the questions that they are going to give. Like I've heard them stumble, and I get it. I do this podcast, and I stumble over my words. Plenty. But when you watch them do their theatrics, their acting, they don't even do that well enough. Like it is not, it doesn't come across as genuine. Like I don't know how they do it. All right. So let me, I did prepare questions. So S1095 has an extremely narrow exception for the life of the mother, but it explicitly excludes mental health conditions. As a therapist, what are the dangers of a policy that ignores mental health as a critical component of maternal safety?
And Senator Margie Bright Matthews said today, the first thing she thought of was Andrea Yates. And, I tend to believe, and I've never seen Andrea Yates's complete psychological rundown, right? But I tend to believe, and I've seen it myself, is postpartum psychosis is terrifying. And, I've had people explain it to me as like, the picture on the wall was talking to me. I mean, this is beyond postpartum depression, the sadness and the baby
Yeah,
blues and the stuff like that. Psychosis is you're literally seeing and hearing things that are not there. It's terrifying. I mean, can you imagine you're going to lose these women no matter what? And it's like, they're going to, are they going to take their whole family with them too while they're
right.
going out? Like that, I think, being unstable, is scary and you can't take care of a child at that time. It takes an entire community to take care of to take care of a baby. And when you have, a mom who is having such mental health issues, to force her to continue that pregnancy is torture.
Yeah. Especially eliminating the regulations involving incest and rape. Now you're forcing women to, or you're proposing the idea that we're going to force women to carry to term the child that made her, the child of what the, the the person that did it created two victims. Because I don't know exactly what happens to children that are the product of rape or incest. Like it's not something I've ever looked into. It's not. I say this basically as a human being that observes other people's behaviors, and I can't imagine what sort of life you grow up into knowing that the person that potentially knowing that the person that fathered you is your brother or your grandfather too, or your mother's uncle or something like that. Like I don't think that I don't know that there's anything that prepares somebody for that.
And I mean, I used to work in psychiatric hospitals for adolescents, and there was, and I'm not saying that's what happens all the time, but I would say there was a lot of times that I would see children that were, conceived in violence from a family member or just violence in general. Most of the time it's a family member, somebody that's close to the family. Um, but they were in psychiatric residential treatment facilities. And again, not always the norm, and that's not always what's going to happen, but I did see it a lot. And antecedent information. But, these are kids, South Carolina kids that were in these places, and a lot of them would come from the upstate. It just is what it is. I mean, I don't have the research numbers to prove any of what I'm, saying, but most of my children that I would see that were products of sexual violence or incest were from, Pickens and Anderson County.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
terrifying.
So we often hear a lot of these Republicans talking about protecting children. In your experience on the ground, does a bill like 1095 align with the actual needs of South Carolina families and children?
Absolutely not. I mean, we need better education in general. If you could look at my walls right now, I mean, it's lined with age appropriate sexual education for kids. And again, I see preschoolers. So, preschool ages, we're teaching our kids the body parts. Those are the types of things that we need. We need, preschool education. We need pre-Ks. We need those kind of things. I think Pickens County really struggles because there are so many children that need IEPs and 504s. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the education is just not adequate, and we got to start them earlier when those are the things that are going on. So, no, absolutely not. And I honestly, if we want to protect children, can we go back and work on the laws for sex offenders? I see them getting off with simple assault charges all the time. literally that was one of the worst things about working at a child advocacy center was seeing and being able to hold accountable the investigator and the solicitor all at the same time. I couldn't do it anymore because they were like, oh, well, we let them plead down to assault. Assault looks nothing like the rape that they committed.
Right.
And so why are we letting them off so that they can go back out and destroy someone else's life? And not everybody that's had, a sexual assault or, some type of sexual abuse happen to them is going to have, ramifications their entire life. Fingers crossed they get into therapy, they get to work through these things and, life becomes a lot better because there is always hope out there. But what about these kids that never say anything about what happened to them? They didn't realize that it was wrong because nobody ever taught them what boundaries were. That no
Right.
one's supposed to touch you there, and I mean that's literally the books I have on my wall. Like red flags, green flags. Those are the things that we work on here. But I mean, if we want to really help kids, let's feed them. Um, I have to feed kids all the time when they come in our office. We literally have a pantry in our office because the kids come in here so often hungry. And then we have food bags that we give out from our office. The sweet ladies of the community put together these food bags for us because these families are going home hungry, even being on food
Yeah.
stamps, even SNAP and, WIC benefits. They're still going home hungry. I mean, these are the things that could really make a difference.
It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. So Bloom Therapy is designed to help children and families navigate trauma.
Yes.
How has seeing the cracks in our state's mental health system influenced your decisions to step into the political arena?
I think just in general, being a licensed professional therapist, like our ethical code is to advocate for the people that we work for and its underserved populations. But seeing the amount of abuse that I see, and I mean, I'm talking about physical abuse, sexual abuse, all the different abuses, the neglect. It makes you want to fight for the things and fight for better. Yeah, I joke with Jermaine Johnson. I'm like, when you're elected governor, I'm coming to be your mental health person because I've been doing this for 15 years. And I've worked with all populations from adults all the way down to 1-year-olds. And I think I have the experience to really help what our state could work on. And I don't know if I want to do like an elected office anymore because it's just difficult in the state, but
Well, and
you have to be
you get
elected to
elected to
help.
office.
Yeah.
Let's say you get elected to office. You are, if you're a senator, you're one of 40 something senators, right?
Right.
If you get elected to the House, you're one of 126, representatives. There is, and I'm, unless you are part of the majority, there is very little impact that you can make besides being a speed bump potentially,
Right.
and ultimately, like in South Carolina, having a supermajority, that speed bump is barely there.
Right.
So you and you're right. If so, when Dr. Jermaine gets elected, I've also approached him about something similar. I want to be his press secretary. So
Let's all work together.
that's right. Absolutely. So your late husband, Eric, he was a veteran. He was a fierce advocate for freedom and democracy. How does his vision of liberty inform the way you approach your work? And when you ran for Senate, what was it that his vision, I guess, drove you?
I don't know. Let me think. Well, I mean, I didn't grow up in a military family. We were outlaws, and that's just the truth of it. We were outlaws. And so I didn't grow up in this like military family and ended
Yeah,
up,
no, she's on with me right now. You can pick her up at our office. Yeah. Go ahead.
right, right. I'm, I changed that lineage, but well, you know, he had the military background. He has a family that was military. And, when we first started dating, we didn't exactly see eye to eye because we didn't understand each other and didn't understand that the same things that we were fighting for were the same things. We were just communicating them incorrectly. exactly. So I think, the freedom and the justice for, freedom, life, liberty, and freedom for everyone. And he wholeheartedly believed in it. And I think he was very hurt to watch a nation that he felt like he had, fought for our freedoms to take away freedoms from his daughters, and take away from our son. And it was very hurtful. I think now, like, if he saw the things that were going on in the military and such, that he would be so hurt. And to watch them take away more mental health treatment from the VA, there are sometimes that I am grateful that he did not have to witness some of the things that are going on now, because he was very sensitive to how people were treated and to treat people with respect, because he came from, such a poor background, and he just had such a big heart and was such a loving person. And if you knew Eric, that is absolutely the truth. I mean, man literally adopted every child that came in his scope. That's how we have so many children together. So, he, I think, fighting for kids that were like him too when he was younger, and the things that he went through and the things that he would tell the kids and I about, that he experienced, being abused and such. And, I think that all that has kind of shaped who I am, because I wasn't quite as close to those experiences as he was. And I didn't know anything about the military. I didn't even know Fort Drum existed. That's terrible, isn't it? I'd never even seen Fort Drum, which is where he was stationed at. He was a mountain man. So where they do cold weather training, I didn't know it existed.
I'll be honest. I think someone could probably make up a name to a fort and quiz me and be like, Fort Jones, Ticonderoga, Smith, Phillips. And I'd be
Right.
like, yeah, sure. Why not? Name
I mean,
them, whatever.
I went to Watertown and saw Fort Drum, and I was like, oh, okay, this is why I never really talk about it. So, it's out in the
That's
middle of
fair.
nowhere, very cold. And we went in October. Yeah, we went in October.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
yeah.
I have told you before that, one of the regrets that I have was that I never got to meet Eric, and I'm jealous of Bill, because he got to sit down with Eric, when he was running for House.
Well, Bill was Bill was like, he was so quiet, and he let you talk. And I'm like, he told me on the way over there, he's like, I don't want to embarrass you, so I'm going to be really quiet, because Eric talked way more than me. He was much more outgoing than I am, which I don't know that that's possible,
Really?
but it was. Yes, like he was.
Yeah.
Never met a stranger, and he was going to bear hug you if he met you. Period. And he was going to lift you up off your feet. Like, that was what he was known for, was his big hugs.
Yeah. No, that absolutely one of my regrets was that I never got to meet him. Because everyone that talks about him, it's the same thing. This was a mountain of a gentle giant.
He'd be tough if he wanted to be.
Yeah. But for the most part, what seemed like his goal, was that he wanted to make sure that everyone was taken care of, even if that meant that he wasn't. He would. He seemed like the type of person that would neglect himself to make sure that others were taken care of. And
absolutely.
And you have certainly continued that. I can't imagine what cost it is to drive from Anderson to Columbia several times a week just to make sure that there's someone to stand at that podium and give their anecdote, which is what they fucking do, to explain why what is being handled by our law and our law creators, our legislators, is not in the best interest of the people. So, I think that what you all do is incredible. And like I said, I wish that I had the opportunity to meet Eric. For those that also regret that, go back and check out Black, White, and Blue in the South interview with Jessicka and Eric, because it was fantastic, entertaining, and very informative. So definitely do that with Mr. Bill Kimler and Dr. Jamil Brooks. You've been a vocal advocate for transgender youth, emphasizing that their freedoms mean the ability to live your life as you see fit in a legislative session filed with restrictive bills. How is it that we shift the conversation back to what compassion and autonomy actually are?
Well, I think that, and I'm just going to be frank here because this is, me talking. When we look at what pornography is trending the highest in South Carolina, let's not lie to ourselves and say it's not transgender porn. And
Really?
oh yeah, transgender porn is right like underneath interracial porn. So, we have some issues, and I think honestly, and this may just be me going muddling through my mind as an over analytical person, but they don't want kids on hormones that are, not permanent, do not cause permanent harm to children. But they also, if a child, like if a transgender youth starts hormones and before and has puberty blockers, which a lot of people don't agree with. Fine, cool. My transgender son did. I mean, he went through a female puberty before he got on hormones, so he had a female puberty. But if they don't have that puberty, they you know n- the physical presence is more feminine, and I think
Hmm.
that that's what they're trying to avoid is seeing someone who looks more effeminate and them liking them and, having an attraction to them because they want to always be able to tell. They always want to clock people. But, and that's the thing is, Barrett, I mean, we've been in person together. I am not a short person. I'm almost
Mm.
6 feet tall and my shoulders are super wide. That's when I met Eric. He was the first guy that I'd ever met who had wider shoulders than mine. My first father-in-law, my ex's dad said I should have been a lineman, like a linebacker. Like he was like, your shoulders are the widest I've ever seen on somebody. He said, I still look like that. So, I'm not a small person. So I've been in restrooms where guys, like a woman will say, like, oh, you're super tall, your shoulders are really broad. Because I don't meet every standard of femininity. And which when I look at myself, I'm like, that kind of blows my mind. But you know, who clocks that? Who gets to say that? And I always find it just funny. Like, who are these people they're going to put outside these bathrooms? To be the people that have to look and see what genitalia somebody has, because I promise you that it's not going to end very well for anyone. With my transgender son, that bill's going to get signed in the next couple of days by Henry McMaster. Okay, so my son, who is very masculine looking, he is days away from being 18 years old and in college, been in college since he was 16, graduated high school 2 years early to get away from bathroom bills. And here it came following him. So, he's going to go into the women's restroom and he's going to get beat up because he has a beard and a mustache. And it is all autonomy. Like, what is it that I can do with my body? But they tend to pressure more and have more of an issue with transgender women. My
Well,
son will
they've
absolutely tell you that he has, there's a certain privilege to being a trans man. There's erasure, but he's not targeted like a trans woman is.
they've very successfully created a boogeyman out of what is a non-issue, because when you mention bathrooms, they act as though bathrooms are some sort of a haven for men to potentially prey on women. And the idea is, for people that don't know, is that there are men, and Republicans believe that there are men that are transitioning just so that they can prey on women in girls' in women's bathrooms. There are men that will transition to being a female in order to get a trophy or a medal. These are there are virtually no statistical anomalies. Anomalies isn't the right word. There's no statistical data to show that this is actually happening.
Right.
We have a couple outliers. I think that somebody said in the NCAA there are more than 500,000 individual athletes. And of those athletes, there's like 7 that are that have transitioned.
I'm
And
more worried about my child living to the next day. I'm not
yeah,
worried about a medal. My kid's not playing, sports. I know a lot of them are not, and that's why. Oh my gosh, these kids that are trans that are playing sports, kudos to them. Because I literally am just more worried that my son is going to take something that a lawmaker says and take it way too personally and believe that he
yep,
doesn't belong here. And it's we've been in this for the long haul. And because this was not something that was new to us. My son's been trans. I started to see it when he was super young, and I almost was kind of in denial about it because I knew this was going to be a tough road for him. But I grew up with a transgender aunt who lived in Piedmont, South Carolina in, the 80s and 90s, and who was super open about it. And, so I knew what being trans was. I had gay cousins. Nothing really bothered me. But yeah, like I just want my kid to live day to day. I, I don't care
yeah,
where they be at. And I will tell you, I, Eric and I owned a security company that worked within nightclubs. So there was many times that Eric and I would work security inside of nightclubs. And we had everybody in the women's bathroom. And even if there happened to be someone that was male that came into the restrooms, it was never because they were trying to harm a woman. They were not even attracted to women. They were in there because they were not accepted into the men's restroom and they were safer with us in our restroom. And you know what? I had never seen, not once, ever seen a woman be upset about who was in the bathroom with them because nobody's trying to hurt us.
well, and every stall has a door or a wall or whatever. Men's bathrooms, we have urinals, and
Yeah, which has always been
that
a weird,
urinal wall,
it's a weird concept to me. I don't. Men's
the
bathrooms are
the
very,
urinal, or
yeah,
the lack of privacy at the urinal,
the lack of
because
privacy.
the wall only comes up to here, which is basically for most men just enough to,
Peek over.
it's
What does
yeah,
that say about
it's
men, though? Like, that's what I
I don't
mean.
know, men are
I've heard
fucking
some stuff.
weird. I
I
fully
have
admit
heard
it.
some things about showers in the military too that I'm just like, y'all did what? Eric's like,
Yeah,
yeah, we'll take
no,
showers at night. I was like, oh, okay.
I do you think well, I guess when it comes to, because these are almost all entirely Republican bills. This weird concern about men transitioning to women. Like, do you think in their heads they're like, no, 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 us. You can't not be one of us, because I think that their assumption is that if you are transitioning, you're probably liberal, which is not the case, because I have several very conservative. Several. I have 2, but I have 2 very conservative. Voted for Trump 3 times.
Mhm.
Uh, friends that transitioned. Now they will not vote for Trump again, not just because they can't, but because he's turned their stomachs enough away from him. But it feels like sometimes when I look at this, like I said, I try to put myself in a position to understand their perspective. And in this situation, is it possible that maybe it's just that these old white Republican men want to be the ones that are preying on children, that are, or maybe it's that they want their lineage to be preying on children.
I have
I
a
don't
really
know.
hard time because, Senator Cash is one of the only reasons why we still have child marriage laws. You know,
Yeah,
we tried
that
to have
was
it bumped
that
up to
was it.
18 and he freaked out. Like he was very upset that, there could we didn't want child brides anymore. I just like
Because yeah, because what is it in South Carolina? It's 16 with
it's
consent, right?
16. Yes, but it just has changed. I couldn't tell you the year, but it's been more recently that it changed because I do remember a girl getting married at 14 in high school with me.
I mean,
And he was upset that it was bumped up to 16.
what parent, first of all, would give consent to allowing their 14-year-old daughter, who is at that point only a few years into their womanhood, to think that is an appropriate age? And look, I get it a little bit. When the country was founded, the average age that a man would live to is potentially in his like mid 50s. Women was somewhere in the 35 to 45 range, but most women died during childbirth at that
Right.
time.
Right.
So I understand the idea that families wanted to create a lineage that continued on. So you had much earlier childbirth, or much earlier children. You were much younger when women were having children, being married off. But we've evolved to the point where we have medicine, and we live considerably longer.
And we have
So
IVF.
right. So why is there why is there such a desire to make children parents? Like why do we have to have 15, 16, 17-year-olds becoming parents?
And
Because
not allow them.
I listened to Cash talk about it, and it was this weird perspective that and I know he was just being cognitively disconnected from the conversation, because he didn't want to act as though what his opinion was wrong. But he was basically advocating that yes, a parent should be able to give consent for their 16-year-old daughter to marry someone, but that the parent couldn't give consent to allow for a child who was impregnated through incest or rape. He didn't want them to be allowed to get the necessary medications that would potentially stop that birth, that pregnancy.
He didn't even want
And
him to
I'm
get
just
birth
like,
control
"Oh."
to like impede
So
it to begin with.
the parent can give consent to get married and have children, but they can't give consent to be able to get them birth
So
control. Like,
my
I don't.
my thoughts on underage marriage is that is just trafficking. Like, South Carolina
Yeah,
changed the
yeah.
law to where, when I was 17, I was able to move out and it was legal. And I'm 43. So, and I'm not even really sure when it changed. It was not when my children were anywhere near that age, so I didn't care. But when I was 17, I moved out. And, now you have to be 18 to move out. And, to have any type of rights in South Carolina, I have a 20-year-old, a son that's about to be 18, twin 15-year-olds, 27 and 25-year-old. I cannot imagine my two 15-year-olds being married off to anyone. They don't need to be married to anyone. My almost 20-year-old, well, my 27-year-old is not married to anyone. My 25-year-old's not married. Mom and dad set a really good example. We got married in our 30s. So, we try really hard to, please wait. It can wait. You can wait, because I did get married fairly young the first time and, regretted it. So,
Yeah,
married a high school sweetheart, and your life is just different. And, we moved in together
yeah,
when we were 18. So we tried to set that. Eric didn't get married the first time until he was 30. And then I think he was 33 when we got married. So, I just can't even imagine my 20-year-old. When we were talking about it the other day, like what age would she want to get married at? Um, she was like, well after grad school.
yeah.
And by the time I was,
Well,
completing grad school, I had 3 kids.
yeah. Well, I can't let you go before I get you to tell us about Anderson Reads and PFLAG. Tell us about both of those.
PFLAG Anderson is the LGBTQIA plus support group in Anderson. We didn't have one. So thankfully, I have done my tenure as the PFLAG president. So we have a different president now, and she's amazing. So those meet, get in touch with them, and they can tell you what time they meet. And then Anderson Reads, we're advocating for, literacy and the freedom to read the books that are appropriate, for our own kids and let us make those decisions. Because, South Carolina legislator wants in on that action too. So,
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting how in South Carolina, we go through these waves of hearing about the books that want to be banned, and then hearing about abortion, and then hear about, how can we make gun laws looser? And then we go back to abortion, and then we'll go back. Like it's just a cyclical cycle that we just seem to be going through, because the Republicans only have like 4 things in their playbook. And those are the those are the things that they just keep coming back to over and over and over.
And I love it when people always make some broad, vast assumption that I am like not a 2A advocate. And there definitely needs to be a lot stricter guidelines on what's going on. But I'm like, y'all, I was married to a combat veteran. I have 6 gun safes in my house. 6. I'm locked and loaded all the time. And they're like, whoa, wait a minute, but that's not a typical liberal. And I was like,
oh,
this is the South.
No,
we've had different rules.
Yeah. No, I get that too. I own firearms. And I would say that you could probably put me up against. I would say you could probably put me up against some pretty advanced shooters. That
we're gonna have to go shoot one day.
I'm a good shot. I'm not like a Raylan Givens good shot, because he's probably 60 yards. He could probably make a headshot, but I'm probably I know that I'm good at 15, and 15's as far as I have to be good at, so
yeah,
that's my opinion. But, I want to say, this is one of those topics that's really difficult to talk about, is abortion, transgender, laws that are designed to have as negative an impact on the actual people that they'll have an impact on, because our legislature creates laws that limit the access to mental health and the medications necessary for transgender. It literally only affects those people that are trying to better their lives. That is it. You create laws against abortion, you are literally only impacting the lives of the women that need the abortions, because the ones that don't need the abortions are more likely to find a way to get the abortions than the people that actually need them, especially if it's medically necessary.
The legislators will find a way to pay them. So,
exactly. Yeah.
And I do want to say that, one thing about our state is that we are fighting like hell. And I hope that people see that. I hope that our presence does not go unnoticed. I know far more people in this state who are fighting for a better South Carolina. And I don't think that I could continue to stay here if I didn't know all the amazing people that I know now. From all the political advocacy that I've done, there are some amazing people in this state, and they are fighting like hell. And to all my trans people out there, we love you. You're seen, you're valid, and you are loved in South Carolina.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that our legislature lacks to recognize is that they are in those offices to create policies and laws that better the lives of everyone, not just having negative impacts on the small minority, the tiny percentage. And ultimately, it seems like that's what Senator Cash, Zell, these type senators, that is their focus, is alienating that very small minority. So, yeah.
Great.
Jess, I really appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
This has been a long time coming, and ultimately, I think in my head, we'll get you on here more times than Bill Kimler here over the course of the next few months. Because
but using my info and my inspiration anyway, so might as well have me, the real thing, instead of him reading.
That's right. All right. Well, I'll include links in the show notes for Bloom as well as Anderson Reads, and you said PFLAG, so I was doing all the letters, which is what I do when I don't know. But yeah, we'll check out the show notes. Also, follow Jess on Instagram. Again, links are in the show notes. It's informative, absolutely, and it's necessary. So. Again, really, really appreciate you coming on the show, Jess. And we'll go ahead and wrap it up for episode 303. Links to all of our past episodes, podcast platforms, merchandise, and social media are available on our webpage, theallaboutnothing.com. And if you think our financial model of giving away free content and entertainment is silly and you're in the giving mood, why not become an official Nothinger and support the show? Members get early access to this episode as well as exclusive content. Visit members.theallaboutnothing.com, or you can find a link on our webpage. You can also give a one-time donation through the same link. If you'd like to be a part of the show, you can call and leave us a message, 803-672-0533, or you can email the show at theallaboutnothing.com, or you can join our Discord server, links found on our webpage. Thanks for listening, everybody. You all stay safe, be kind, and
keep your hands to yourself.
The All About Nothing podcast is a product of Big Media and produced and engineered by me, Barrett Gruber. Thanks to Cake for our intro music, Sick of You. You can follow everything Cake the band at cakemusic.com. Thanks to Muff the producer for our outro music. You can follow Muff on Instagram at Muff the producer. You can follow me across social media by visiting Linktree/Barrett Gruber, and you can follow Zac King on Linktree/AANZac. Want to support the show? Visit our webpage, theallaboutnothing.com, and become a member. There are several tiers available that give you early access to episodes as well as exclusive content. To find links to our social media, podcast platforms, and merchandise to support the show, as well as past episodes, visit theallaboutnothing.com. If you'd like to be a part of the show, you can email the show at theallaboutnothing.com, or you can call our number and leave a message. Dial 803-672-0533. If the time between these episodes is more than you can handle, check out our sister shows. What the Pod Was That with Carrie, Zach, and myself. Welcome to Wonderland with Ami. Politically Speaking with Erica, Kirsten, and Emily. And Black, White, and Blue in the South with Dr. Jameel Brooks and Bill Kimmler. Please subscribe and share this show. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe and punch that notification bell. Thank you for listening, and hear us next week. The preceding podcast is solely owned by the host or hosts and is distributed by Big Media, LLC. Copyright 2026.